Often the mark of a life well lived are good kids, loving friends, and a legacy of helping others. When 94-year-old Udell Paul of Aniana, Alabama passed, she indeed left all of that. But what her family didn't expect was the gift of a final promise kept.
My mom was a phenomenal lady. I tell everybody, her world was small but not confined. She was born, married, and died in the exact same house about 3 miles from Aniana, Alabama, which is up in the mountains.
Rusty Paul is at heart a country boy, but as the mayor of Sandy Springs, Georgia, a bustling suburb of Atlanta, he understands the rough and tumble landscape of politics. Promises broken, promises kept. He wanted to share what he didn't expect in his family's most difficult hour.
We were at the funeral home making plans, and the funeral director said, well, did she have a burial policy? And my sister said, well, no. I said, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Yes, she did. Probably only paid about $100, but it's $100. Mom would want us to use it. And I pulled it out. I had never even opened it, and I opened it up and realized that my grandfather had bought it and had paid it off in 1942, and it had a face value of $250.
Mayor Paul's grandfather paid the insurance man religiously, 10 cents a week, investing a total of $87. So imagine the family's surprise when they learned what it covered nearly 80 years later.
And I read the terms of the policy. It paid for everything: casket, embalming, transportation, a new dress.
And this policy, as you can see, is very old, just an old retail value of about $250.
Jason Thomas is the funeral director at Limley Chapel, which happens to be owned by the same company that sold the policy back in 1942.
Some families are expecting to pay thousands of dollars for a funeral, but when they realize that these policies take care of the majority of it, plus the casket, they are relieved and just thankful that their grandparents had taken out those policies way back when.
Tell us about your grandfather, the one that took this policy out.
He was an interesting guy. He was a World War I veteran. He was actually in the last infantry charge of World War I. I remember in the rural South in that period when I was small, the debit man came every week. He was the insurance guy. And my grandmother would go in the back and she'd get her little change purse and a couple of dollars and some change, and she'd pay whatever insurance policies. And I'm sure that's how they did it. But he believed in taking care of his family from birth to death. And that was his legacy, and that's what he left us.
How many of these policies still exist?
More than I can count. About 30, 40 years worth.
To go?
To go.
It takes a huge burden off your family to know that you've been able to sit down and work with somebody who's reputable. And I tell you what, I would have had a tough time going to the cemetery and explaining to him why we wasted his $87 if we hadn't used it for Mom.
The insurance responsible for the coverage is called Brown Service. They humbly decline to take credit, saying it's what they do.